Photographs. We all love to review photographs, from the very young to the very old. But for students in a classroom, it's very important that we help center them and look for detail. Let's take a look at a few of these here. When analyzing a photograph, we need to direct students towards the people, objects, actions, and background within a photograph. The first one we're looking at here, we see three gentlemen, nicely dressed to be working in a field. And it looks as if they're standing in front of a barn. If we look at the advertisements on the barn, we can see that one of the advertisements states Schenectady, New York. So we're starting to get an idea about where the location is. Also, through the advertisements and their clothing, we might also start to get an idea of the time period. This is actually 1940. When we move down to the second photograph here, we can see that this is actually a staged photo. It's a publicity photo. In 1940, these three gentlemen were placed together to actually promote the fact that they were cracking down on marijuana being grown illegally. In 1937, legislation was passed that made it illegal to grow and sell marijuana, and this was used as a promotional shot. But not all photos are that really easy to interpret. Some photos, like this one here, there is a tremendous amount of detail in this photograph. Teachers can actually divide this photograph into 4 quadrants and have students analyze one quadrant at a time. Students will be able to pull a tremendous amount of detail from the single shot if they actually break it up. Also, photographs can be very emotional. We can group them together to almost tell a story of a time period. This one here, Elmira, New York, World War I. In this photograph, we have a group of people, community members, starting to gather around the first listing of draftees during this time. And as time went on, you could see almost as if the whole community came out to read the list. If we look at this in a chronological order, the third picture here is very emotional, where casualties of war and bodies have returned to Elmira, New York. And if you look closely, the coffins are actually in formation of a cross. Very, very powerful grouping of documents. Here, we see a group of documents that will show transportation. We have a group of people exiting a train and boarding a barge on the Erie Canal. They are attending a sightseeing trip for the day. And if you look closely, you can see they are dressed in their very, very best. All the hats and bonnets. If we move on, we can see the Erie Canal representing industry. In this photo here, a barge is pulled up, getting ready to be loaded with materials and supplies. Also, we see a team of mules with a young gentleman walking and leading them. This is very interesting, though, because it also shows a train. We could have a great discussion about the competition between the change in transportation for industry. We move on, and we could see over time, chronologically, the difference between the Erie Canal and the barge canal. Here, this photo takes place in 1951. With the renovation and the changes to the canal, you can see larger barges were able to transport goods. This barge was Albany Standard Oil Company of New York. Now, photographs with people. Sometimes students quickly flip by them. They might, on their first initial view, identify General Grant and then move on to another photo. However, we need to encourage students to look at the individual people and to pursue and persuade them to research. If we look at this group sitting around General Grant, we can see that we have L.E. Parker sitting here. He's a Seneca Native American sitting to the left of Grant. Really encourage your students to look that name up. Very interesting background. Now, our last photo that we have is an interesting one. We have a group of women sitting with very unique hats. Students sometimes giggle when they look at this one. But this photo proves a really important point, that we as educators and even historians do not always have answers to all the questions. And it's important because children, while they analyze these documents and photos, will come up with questions that we won't be able to answer. What we know about this photograph, it was taken in Troy, New York in 1918. So we know about the time period. We know the context in which this picture was taken. We do not specifically know why this group was together, but we do know they were very patriotic. They were sitting in front of a flag. Bring in a photograph and watch your students become natural historians.